How we doing, everybody? So we're going to do some astrology again today. I wanted to do a slightly longer video, sort of giving you an example of what my readings look like. Um, Obviously, it's good for me to share so that people are more likely to work with me, but also just so you guys can see how I work, because it is very different. Ancient astrology is very, very different. And I know I'm not in like the best lighting. I feel a bit odd, in my skin and my hair today. I don't know what's going on, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to be sharing the screen most of the time anyway. So this time we're going to look at the relationship readings. How do I go about those? And obviously, I'm using quite advanced software here, so you will not have access to a lot of this stuff. Well, I mean, if a few crafty individuals gain access to these Venus phases, to be honest, I don't even know. Like, you can find them on different websites, but it's a little, you have to hunt for it. These are the heliacal phases of Venus. So I'm going to put that in the description. You'll want to check that out because that's really important in this technique. Basically, what we're looking at here is the balance of, it's pretty straightforward, the balance of good and bad planets between two charts of people in a relationship, right? So we want to know, are the destinies harmonized? You could say, are they magnetically harmonized? Because our aura is formed by the positions, cycles, and phases of the planets around the time of our birth, not just at the moment we took our first breath. That is the most important point, but also around, because we're looking at cycles. And the most important point is the beginning. So my Venus, here is an evening star. This Venus here is an evening star. Shouldn't have said mine. It's not mine, don't worry. It's my friend. It's my very close friend. His Venus, or maybe even her Venus, is an evening star here in the 12th house. And it's obviously in the middle of its phase. And so we want to look at the beginning and the end of its phase as an evening star to see where my Venus is strongest in the zodiac, basically. Strongest and weakest. The weakest will be where it disappears. The strongest will be where it appears. So actually, I'm in the wrong place. Here we go. This is the right one. So the same chart, different pentagram you can see. So here we have number one is the appearance of Venus as an evening star before my friend's birthday. And here it appears, somewhere like 12 degrees of Sagittarius. This is sidereal, something like that, 12 degrees of Sagittarius. So anybody with 12 degrees of Sagittarius in their chart will be very compatible with me. They'll be a very long-lasting friend, a very long-lasting partner, things like that. Very good partner as well. And this is true. I have the one friend I have who has, how long is it now? How long have we been friends? 8.5 years now. Which is funny, number eight, right? For those of you who know, eight is the number of Venus, the cycle of Venus. So we've been friends now for a full cycle of Venus already. 8 years. And his ascendant is right here, right in the, I think it's a little upwards, sort of around 18 Sagittarius, but it's right on where my Venus appears. So I thought this was really quite fascinating. And I have another friend as well also with Sagittarius rising. Actually, I have two other friends, but one in particular I'm thinking of. And he's how long have we been friends for now? I think a year, 2 years, about 2 years we've been friends for. And yeah, it's looking it's very interesting. I mean, obviously I don't know. We don't know for sure yet. I'll have to, check back in with you guys in 20 years or something and let you know how it all pans out. But as far as I can sense intuitively, it looks like that is a friendship that will last for a very long time as well, because I mean, we're both astrologers, we're both on the same path, that sort of thing. So it's pretty interesting. So it's not just about love. It is also about love. We're going to look at this love reading right now. I'm going to do an example. My friend and his girlfriend. And just sort of show you guys how I would weigh it up. And it's interesting, right? Because this is a real partnership. So we're going to see if the reading stands up to the test of time as well. Or stands up to scrutiny, sorry, is a better way to put that. So basically what we're looking at, good positions, Venus and Jupiter, and the appearance of Venus. So this number 1 here and number 1 here. Bad positions, Mars, Saturn, and the disappearance of Venus. So we've got about three things that we're looking at. So my Venus appears in Sagittarius. Where is Sagittarius here in her chart? Saturn and Neptune in the 11th house. So there's not really much here. Saturn is there. It's a good Saturn, good house. 11th house is a good house, so it's not that bad. Maybe we couldn't really say very much about this just from looking at that. Because it's connected with Saturn, maybe we would say things will improve. It's a good Saturn, so we would say things will improve with time. They might be difficult in the beginning, but they will improve with time, or even separations in the beginning. Saturn is about loneliness, which is true, actually. We have been separated in the beginning quite a long time. And Venus and Saturn. Yeah, but other than that, there's not much going on here, basically. What about her Venus appears in the horns of Taurus down there? Let's look at the horns of Taurus in my chart. Aha, look, there's lots going on here. 10th house, Sun, Mercury. So her Venus is appearing in my 10th house with my Sun and Mercury. So this is going to be very good for our careers, especially my career, actually, funnily enough, but for both of us. It'll be very successful, working relationship as well. But this is a good overall, I mean, specifics aside, this is a good sign. If Venus is appearing on my Sun, very good sign. Also, my Sun is with her Jupiter. Look, her Jupiter is there around 11 degrees of Taurus. Mine is at 17. So they're actually in a conjunction in my 10th house and her 4th house. So we have very good compatibility for working together and for living together, which is very interesting. And this is also another good sign. Jupiter with the Sun, very positive, very, very positive. Very positive omen. What else? So let's go to the planets. Well, actually, let's go to the disappearance of Venus for now. Is it this one? Yes. So look at that, funny. Both of our Venuses disappear on our ascendant. So both of us are not really destined for an easy love life. Things are not going to be smooth, basically, or they're not going to be, cut of the mill. They're not going to be straightforward. So, and because I'm a Leo, she's an Aquarius rising, so our Venuses are actually disappearing on each other's descendant, which is not great, basically. That's not a great sign. Whoops. Hers is a little far away from my descendant. It's like way up here around 22 degrees or something. My descendant's at 4. And mine's disappearing around 10 degrees of Leo, and her descendant is 15. So it's quite close, actually. So, not so good. This is exactly what this means is kind of hard to pinpoint. Basically, it's just a couple of, it's a we're doing pluses and minuses, right? We've had a few pluses. Now we're taking some minuses with the disappearance of Venus. However, the good thing with all that is that our Venuses are not disappearing on the other person's ascendant. That would be, that would be death. That would be very, very bad. So, but on the descendant, it's a bit more, it's not great, but it's a bit more flexible. The descendant's a weaker angle than the ascendant, of course. Okay. So those are the Venus phases. So we've looked at both of the Venus phases, basically. It's in terms of the Venus phases, it's not looking, it's okay, but it's not the best. So what we can say with that, we can't say immediately that this relationship will fail, but we can say that there will be difficulties, there will be challenges. And and if somebody came to me with two charts and they're just thinking about starting a relationship, or they want to kind of see what's going on, why do they feel attracted to this person? That's the perfect time to do this reading, because then I will say, this looks good, green light, you can go ahead, this looks good to me, or run for the hills. That's really the best time to have this kind of session done. So if there were a lot of really bad things piling up, I would be like, look, hold your horses, And a lot of the time there is that kind of stuff. There is your ascendant is conjunct with their Mars-Saturn opposition. It's just like, are you kidding me? Like, no, absolutely don't go for it. That's going to be a horrible, horrible, horrible partnership in the long run. So, the Venus disappearance, it's a bit, it's a little dodgy, but there's good stuff here as well, balancing it out. So it's very mixed. It's a very mixed story so far. Okay, what about let's go with the good planets. So my Jupiter is in Aries, which is her third house. So kind of meh, nothing really there. It is actually in a sort of trine with her Saturn and her Sun. Her Sun, so, you might think that Sun's at the end of Leo. That's not in a trine. Her Sun is parallel with Regulus over the descendant. So if we take the descendant like a mirror, exactly opposite the Sun is the Sun's parallel position, and that falls pretty much like 1 degree away from Regulus, like right on my ascendant. And which is also a powerful kind of omen, having the Sun there. The Sun is a bit more complicated because the Sun and the Moon are both very complicated because they take on the energy of the planets that aspect them. Her Sun has what? Square with Jupiter and kind of a out of bounds square with Saturn as well. But they're both pretty weak asymmetrical squares, and it's in a solar eclipse. Just after a solar eclipse, she was born. So, yeah, it's a bit problematic there, that Sun. So again, we kind of get this mixed story where things are sort of up and down. Jupiter is in a trine with Saturn, with her Saturn, and my Jupiter is in a trine with her Saturn and her Sun, the parallel of her Sun, which is actually really very positive. I do have to make a little caveat. The aspects, but conjunctions, very powerful, very important. Trines, squares, oppositions, pretty strong as well. But trines, squares, oppositions, sextiles, those aspects, they're weaker. They're quite a bit weaker than the conjunction in this case. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at them. They definitely, let's say a conjunction's at 100% power, probably the other aspects maybe like 70%. So they're not as significant, but we definitely want to look at them. And so we've got my Jupiter there in her third house, trine with the Sun, trine with Saturn. So this is good for building wealth and building a career for both of us, actually. Saturn and Jupiter in a trine is money and real estate, property. And the sun is authority. Yeah, authority, leadership, success, your high status, high position. And it's funny that that's happening in the social houses as well. The 11th is the hopes and dreams. The 7th is the marriage. And the 3rd is the siblings and the spirituality as well. So it's kind of an interesting little combo there. But it looks good, actually. It's funny looking at this now, actually. That does look pretty good. All things considered. I was thinking about it before, like, oh, my Jupiter's just in her 3rd. It's not really doing anything, but actually it's in a trine with her sun, trine with her Saturn in these good houses. So looks good to me. My Saturn, well, actually, we'll leave Saturn and Mars for a different section. So that's my Jupiter. What about her Jupiter? We talked about this. It's with my sun in her 4th house, my 10th house. So very powerful, very lucky, again, this Jupiter-Sun connection, very good for the success, actually, high status, which is interesting. Well, we have to see how the relationship evolves. It's just beginning now, but we'll see where it goes after, looking at these two charts together. Saturn, myself, I just want to talk about Saturn. My Venus, well, we have the same Venus. Look at that, both in Cancer and both in bad houses. So her Venus in my 12th house and my Venus in her 6th house. That's pretty bad, to be honest. Anything in the 6th and the 12th house is going to be a real big problem. You can look at her Venus. Her Venus has lots of good aspects: trines, sextiles, Mars, Jupiter, Moon, Mercury. They're all sextiles and trines. It's still not, which is very, very helpful, very supportive. But the fact that it's in the 6th creates a lot of issues. I won't talk about it. I won't talk about it in this video, but yeah, just take my word for it for now. And you already know probably the story with my Venus, how many issues it has caused me. or it has revealed that I was destined for. Let's put it that way. Anything else with Venus there? I mean, it's not the North Node. My North Node being in the same sign as Venus is actually good. That makes things less negative, less difficult, because it accentuates the Venusian aspect of things, which is nice. But I mean, my Venus, it's in Cancer. It's not really, it's maybe has a weak trine and sextile with Jupiter and Mars, her Jupiter and Mars. But other than that, there's not much happening there. And her Venus is receiving the square of my Saturn. So that's not, well, also the square of my Jupiter. So it's not the end of the world, but it's kind of, yeah, again, a bit weak. It's not much really that I wouldn't draw many conclusions from that alone. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. There is kind of a secret here. 30, 37, that'd be 42 or something, yeah, where her Venus is parallel with her Moon and Mercury here, which means that my Venus is also parallel with her Moon and Mercury there, which is kind of interesting. So mixed bag, very mixed bag. I'm not going to draw many conclusions from that. It's kind of edging towards the more negative side, but it's not the end of the world, really. There's good stuff as well. So again, we get this kind of very mixed thing. Keeping in mind, these two charts are very, very mixed up. There's a lot of good and a lot of bad. So this is not an easy reading to do because it's very subtle. There are some where it's just like, okay, this Mars and Saturn are on your ascendant, just give it up. Don't even try. So, okay, so those are the Venuses. Okay, so that's Jupiter, Venus, the appearance of Venus. We're all kind of accounted for here. Now let's move on to the malefic Saturn. So let's have a look. So my Saturn is in her third house again, same as her Jupiter, with my MC, so angular. So very powerful. So this means that her siblings will be very important in our relationship, in our connection, which is really interesting because they are very important. And Saturn, I mean, look, it's just sort of sitting there in third. It's not doing much again. It has a trine with her sun, which is nice, but and the square with her Venus. So that's curious. I've actually never thought about that square with her Venus before. It's a little, yeah, that is kind of funny. I wouldn't, it's not really something that you would base the whole reading on. That's why I'm only just realizing it now, because it's not really that, it's kind of matters a little bit. It's interesting, but it's not really that important. I mean, think about how many aspects are just in one chart. Now think about putting two charts together. You get a lot of aspects. So you don't have to, you really don't need to look at every little thing and then, oh, there's a bad aspect, I'm going to freak out now. It's just relax. It doesn't matter that much. There are certain things that are really important though. So yeah, my Saturn's not really doing much. What about my Mars? So my Mars is on speaker in Virgo up here in her sort of 8th/9th house, close to her Mercury and her moon. So this is actually quite a positive, obviously with Mars being very powerful. Okay. Forgot to mention this. This is important. I really should have mentioned this at the start because this is the whole point of this video. 5 important places. That's what astrology always, so that's what good astrology always comes down to. The 5 important places: Sun, Moon, Ascendant, MC, Descendant, and the IC to a certain degree. That's why I'm saying that these aspects between like Saturn and Venus and whatever else, they don't, and even Jupiter and the Sun, they don't matter a huge amount. What matters, well, actually, Jupiter and the Sun, that's with the Sun, so that is important. But between Jupiter and Saturn, for example, that's less important because it's just an aspect between 2 planets. It's like they're not power, they're not places of power, they're just planets. So anytime something is conjunct one of those places, ascendant, MC, descendant, Sun or Moon, or the IC if you want, then this is big, 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 very, very, very important. So what have we seen already? Her Jupiter connected with my Sun, my Jupiter connected with her Sun. Our Venus phases are kind of funny. Our Venuses appear on each other's descendant, or disappear on each other's descendant, sorry. And does hers appear on my Sun? Yeah, so that's very important. And mine, on its second appearance, number 2 here, does again happen on her descendant. So again, like I've been saying the whole time, very, very mixed bag. And then mine, yeah. She have disappearance number 2, yeah, and then her second disappearance on my ascendant, which is kind of funny. So very, very mixed bag again. But those are what we're looking at. So my Mars is there with close to her moon. So that means that Mars and Jupiter, well, because we looked at Jupiter and the Sun in both our charts, and now my Mars is coming up on her moon, which is interesting. So and Mercury is involved as well. So it's Moon, Mars, and Mercury all combined together. So this will be a relationship where they learn a lot together. It will have the Martian energy, there will be heat and the sexual spark, as well as quick arguments, quick anger. That's what Mars always brings. It's not too bad because the conjunction is very, very wide, and the conjunction is very close with Mercury. So it will be very intellectual. There'll be Mercury is very good with Mars. Very, very, very good with Mars. It really steers Mars towards a much more moderate direction. It becomes much more logical, so there will be heat, intense heat, intensity. There'll be some, strong sexual urges and strong passion, anger as well. Anger being one of the passion, being a passion, a form of passion. But Mercury being involved means that it's never going to get too hot. It's, even if it does get too hot, it can be the mind, the intellect, the logic can reel it back into where it's meant to be, which is actually very positive. So it's interesting. Usually Mars showing up very strong is not a good sign. It's very strong for somebody who, you're going to have a very quick and highly sexual relationship with. But other than that, it's going to fizzle out very, very quickly. That's Mars. Mars is the sex drive. So again, what I keep saying it, mixed bag. That's my Mars on her moon, which is kind of interesting. And then her Saturn is in Sagittarius, not really connected with my chart very strongly at all, apart from the trine with my Jupiter. Her Mars is in Pisces here, which is also not really connected with my chart at all. In the 8th house there, pretty much no aspect to anything bright or important. So kind of interesting. So the malefics in that chart are quite weak, which is very good. Apart from my Mars, being on her moon, which is a little sketchy, but it could be a lot worse. It's not bad. It's really not that bad at all. It just shows that there'll be strong passion, which is not too strong, which is good. You do not want the strong fires of Mars alone. It needs to be tempered by something, because those strong fires, that's very destructive for the human being, actually. Yeah, Mars is this cosmic force that we have to learn how and where to channel. Anyway, that's philosophy. So the malefics were very weak in both our charts, which is that's a really good thing. You want Mars and Saturn to kind of be in the 8th or the 12th or the 6th or the 2nd, maybe less so the 2nd, because that's money, but the 8th or the 12th or the 6th, those are okay, for the malefics to be. Even the 3rd is okay as well, because it's a bit weaker. You do not want the malefics on the sun or the moon or the ascendant or the MC, that sort of stuff. You don't want that. So that's good. The malefics are fairly weak. The benefics were pretty strong, right? You saw that. Jupiter with the sun in strong houses, the 4th house, the 10th house, that sort of stuff. The 7th house with her sun and my Jupiter in the trine. And my Saturn in a trine as well, which actually, is also a good thing. Moderates the badness of Saturn. So that's pretty good. Our Venuses are in kind of little bit sketchy places there. They're not the most beneficial, but they're a little bit of a wash. I'd kind of look at those Venuses and just be like, yeah, whatever, there's more important things to look at. It's not great. We could say that there'll be times where they may be separated by work or separated for whatever reason. The 12th house is Saturn again, separation, and 6th house is work. but yeah, and then my Saturn squaring her Venus. So maybe my travel is again causing some separation between us because it's in a travel house, the ninth and third. What's the other thing? God, I always lose my train of thought. There's so much to think about with astrology. So those are my Venuses. Yes, and then the Venus phases were the last thing, which was, what was it? Her Venus appeared on my sun. My Venus appeared on her Saturn, which was a bit weird. Her Venus disappeared on my descendant, and my Venus disappeared on her descendant. So, as you can see, right, it's a very, very mixed bag. I'm gonna keep saying it because that's just what it is, and it's not that often, but I do come across charts like this in sessions, and I'm just like, look, this actually looks okay to me. Especially if somebody's already in a relationship, it's kind of like, well, yeah, this is fine because I mean, what relationship doesn't have problems, right? Um, Especially if in the individual charts, their relationships they're destined to have difficulties in relationships. For example, my Venus in the 12th house, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter where I go. Like things are going to be, I'm going to have to face difficulties in love one way or another. Um, and with her Venus in the 6th as well, it's a little similar, and all that stuff on the descendant. Bit intense there. So, the fact that there's a couple of negative omens there is not really the end of the world. If it was Venus disappearing on the ascendant, well, okay, we got to, this is something we really want to sit back and think about. In this case, it's not. And I have had a relationship in the past with where my Venus disappeared on her ascendant. And yeah, that's right. That's really interesting now that I'm thinking about that. And that relationship was, it was actually a pretty good relationship, but it ended, it was me who ended it, my Venus disappearing on her ascendant. Whereas in the past, just so you guys know, every girl my age, their Venus disappears on my ascendant. So all of my relationships in high school were a disaster. And guess what? All of my relationships in high school, it was my girlfriend leaving me. Every single one. I had like 3 relationships in high school. Yeah. Every single one. They were the one walking out on me. And then as soon as I dated a girl a different age, it was me leaving because it was my Venus disappearing on her ascendant. Rather because she had the same ascendant as me. So anyway, because of course I was born in that year, so my Venus disappears on my ascendant, which means that yeah, so that's that ascendant piece. So that is kind of interesting, but the relationship was pretty nice. It was actually a pretty good relationship. So it doesn't always, it's not always like, oh my God, end of the world. You've got to, astrology is very holistic. We need to make sure we look at everything. And if there's a couple of snags, I mean, nothing's perfect, right? If there's a couple of snags in the charts, the combo, I mean, in some ways, so what? That's life. That's totally normal. The thing you really want to avoid is when it's only snags, which happens quite a lot. There's quite a lot of I see that quite often. So people come to me with a chart and I'm like, okay, well, let's have a look. Let's see. Oh, I'm going to start by looking at your ascendant. Oh, it's with Mars and Saturn. Or, oh, it's with their travesty night Saturn on the MC. It's just like so obvious that this isn't meant to work out. Or if somebody's got a big cluster of, Saturn, Moon, Mars, all this stuff piled on top of each other, which is bad stuff, and your sun or something is in that area, or your moon, run for the hills, please. This is going to be a nightmare. But if somebody's got lots of good stuff, maybe they've got Jupiter and Venus in a conjunction in the 11th house, or Jupiter, Venus, and the moon. I mean, God, that would be a beautiful conjunction to have. If so long as they're visible, of course. If they're invisible, that's a nightmare. But if they're visible, that's beautiful. In a good house as well. That's great. If your sun is there, oh, beautiful. Go for it. Absolutely, you get my green flag. So it is a subtle art. Let me put it that way. So if you take anything away from this video, remember the 5 important places: sun, moon, ascendant, MC, descendant. And the balance of good and bad omens in conjunction with those 5 places. That's really what matters. If you liked this video of this guy, you know the drill. Please subscribe. That'd be wonderful. Or even better yet, you can look at my Patreon. There'll be a link in the description. I do lots of videos like this there. You get to know me a bit more personally as well. I want to have more personal interaction, as well as you sign up, I will send you your own chart in my system that you just saw, along with 3 other styles of chart that come in the Placidus 7 program. And they're very, very advanced, as well as a guide on how to interpret them. So you won't be totally lost. So don't worry about that. And all my services will be in the description. Please hit that like button, and I'll see you guys next time.